Welcome one, welcome all, welcome to the fourth video in this Creepy Stories playlist. I hope you've been enjoying the last three videos, and this video is no different. We're going to be started with some, in fact, we're only going to be reading Reddit stories this time for the aforementioned reason I told you guys about last time with that, well, the best stories are on Reddit. We all know this. So anyway though, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the first story. This story was written by Reddit user Wally58533. My dad was heading to his hometown from his college. Now he left later than expected, so it was basically pitch black out. Right before you get to his hometown, there is this straight road through some trees with a couple of turns. He is driving through this part and notices a flash of light in his mirror. He looks closer and realizes it's a car tailgating him with their lights off. He is kind of startled and presses his brakes some to light up his rear end and confirms there is a car there. In response to this, he floors it. He had a top-of-the-line Camaro at the time and is speeding down this road. He goes a bit and slows back down and looks in his mirror. The car is still there. My dad is confused as heck right now. Then the car pulls out and starts creeping towards his window. My dad looks out his window and sees a black hearse full of smoke lit purple. He is freaking out now. The hearse drives in front of him and lets out the smoke, making my dad basically blind. He puts on the brakes, and when the smoke clears, the hearse is gone. Not quite unexplainable though. Turns out a local one, a tricked out hearse, and gave it giant mufflers and stuff to make it quiet, and would drive on that road, freaking out drivers. This story was written by Reddit user C. Williker. A local urban legend, the Running Man Highway 12 Ghost. He's a runner that only runs at night. He's known for passing cars multiple times in the same direction. His route begins at the bottom of a set of cliffs, goes up a road with no sidewalk, and continues along the cliff. I passed him twice one night. Interestingly, his face is never visible, but he wears a bright vest like night runners or construction workers wear. He's reported to cause accidents all up and down Highway 12. Seeing him the first time was weird. My buddy said, "Isn't it a little late for anyone to be running?" It was 3 a.m. We passed him a few minutes later, and we turned around and didn't see him again. We went to my buddy's house to smoke weed and calm down. I don't believe in ghosts, but I can't explain that experience. This story was written by Reddit user HP Statecraft. Rod Stewart haunted my car something, I swear. Bear with me on this. This happened one night in the early 80s after working late, probably about 1 a.m., driving home in a wooded country area. It was a bit foggy, and I remember looking up at the sky and thinking, classic spooky moon, since it was so bright yet obscured by clouds and mist. Around the same time, I turned up the radio, not because I particularly liked the song, but because I couldn't quite tell what it was. I had the radio pretty low. Well, it was a song by Rod Stewart, and I said something like, "Who the mess listens to this crap?" Then flipped the station. But that station was playing the same dang song. Okay, weird coincidence, but I still didn't want to listen to Rod, so I shut the radio off. There weren't many good stations in my area. Well, the radio did shut off, but at the same time, my car shuddered and stalled out. Couldn't get the car to start, so I tried pumping the gas a couple of times and gave it another go. No dice. At that point, I wasn't looking forward to the walk home. It was under 10 miles and summer, so certainly doable, but I had a weird feeling, and my imagination was running wild. Nevertheless, I could not get that car to start. While I walked home, I could have sworn I kept hearing bits and pieces of that song coming from behind me. The next day, my dad drove me back to the car to have a look at it, and on the way I mentioned how Rod Stewart kept playing. He laughed and said something about not liking him much either. When he tried the car, it, of course, started on the first try, and he said I must have flooded it, which didn't explain the stalling, but whatever. All is well. Here's the kicker. He goes into the ditch to pee before we head back while I'm in my car messing around with the radio, and he comes back waving something around in his hand. I roll down the window. It's a cassette. A doggone Rod Stewart cassette he found in the ditch. And he says if I didn't want to be listening to Rod Stewart, I probably shouldn't be wasting my money on his music. I go white, because no way was that mine or in my car. I grab it to confirm, and launch that sucker into the woods, never to be seen again. So there's my story about being haunted by Rod Stewart's crappy music while driving at night. This story was written by Reddit user The Great Sarah. One summer, I took a long road trip with a friend at the time around the southwestern US. We hit up everything we wanted, and because we're young and don't give two craps about most things, we were driving long hours at any time of the day. This specific late night, early morning, we were driving to a hotel just outside of the Grand Canyon. Now, we were certainly tired and it was late, but we hadn't been driving long enough to really be in any danger to ourselves. So I was driving down this 2-lane road trying to find our hotel with my friend helping me. We see some lights ahead of us, clearly the headlights of a car in the distance. Move on from it and keep looking so we can finally get some rest. The lights get closer. And closer. They look like they were heading straight for us without stopping. Both of us realized what's happening, and I actually drove off the road to avoid being hit by whatever was attached to those lights. But there was nothing. As soon as I drove off the road, they disappeared. My friend and I both saw them, and we weren't tired enough to have such a frightening double hallucination. Nothing passed by us. Nothing turned. Just completely gone. There was no car. It was just like they vanished into thin air after they did their job. My friend and I were definitely freaked out because there was nothing else in the area anywhere. We still had a ways to go before we got to our hotel even. It took a few minutes to regroup, but eventually we made it to the hotel and spent the night before exploring the next day. But there was, and is, no explanation for what forced us off the road that night in the middle of nowhere.